I think there are all sorts of exegetical fallacies that Rob makes. When he begins his book by talking about for God so loved the world, John 3:16, and then of course he doesn't go to 17 and 18, where it says those who reject the Son are already condemned. But there, I think the assumption again is when it says for God so loved the world, Don talked a little bit about the different ways that we can understand love. The word there, so, is an adverb. It doesn't mean it in a quantitative sense, but it means it in a qualitative sense. For God in this manner loved the world, not so much loved the world. In what manner did he love the world? And you go to verses 14 and 15 and going back to Numbers 21. But also the reference there to for God so loved the world, and Don had said this nicely, the word there, world, cosmos in the Greek, in the Johannine corpus, is not referring so much to the bigness, but it's referring to the badness of the world. I think that's how you put it, Don. And in other words, the word there, world, is referring to the sinful world system, not necessarily every individual in the world, which I think is assumed throughout the book and by many universalists, but it's talking specifically about the badness of the world. Now, lastly, I had a grandfather who was a Confucianist. He was not a Christian. He believed in the existence of some higher being. And he died several years ago. He was like 95 or 96. So that works to my favor, I think. For him, who grew up in an Eastern culture where the Koreans, that's my ethnicity, lived under Japanese oppression, for him, he has no difficulty with the justice of God. For him, coming from an Eastern perspective, has no problems that people who were wicked and evil and oppressive ought to be judged. But he would have more difficulty with the love of God. How can a loving God simply wipe away somehow all of the oppression and the wickedness? And I think that is not an exegetical fallacy on the part of Rob Bell and others, but it's an epistemological fallacy, in the sense that people, that we ought to understand this doctrine or read the scriptures primarily from a Western perspective, because Easterners or others who are non-Western view the doctrine of the justice of God and the doctrine of love very, very differently. So again, we have to read the scriptures, trying to understand the author's intention, and not try to assume that our social location is the appropriate way of reading the scriptures.